Okay, now finally I call these slides, or this slide, uh, I call this slide Imagineering, like Disney does, Imagineering the future, and uh, pay a lot of attention. Okay, a lot of attention. This is like same kind of thing as the big database slide. So what do you do to measure, to assure inventory today, audit inventory today? You send someone to the warehouses to count what's in there in inventory, what's sitting in inventory currently. And so, comes to the year end, you basically go to the warehouse of the clients and measure it. Um, the problem is that a lot of companies don't sell physical inventory. They sell virtual inventory, they sell music, they sell software, they sell things that physically don't exist. So you can't physically count. That's one problem. Second problem is that many companies don't carry a lot of inventory. There's something called supplier managed inventory. Actually, the inventory of JCPenney's used to be basically owned by the suppliers. It only owned by JCPenney for in the moment of the transaction was from the supplier to JCPenney, from JCPenney to the client, or directly from the supplier to the client and a cut to JCPenney's. So there is already this modernity of electronic inventory, but still there is physical inventory, and companies take probably once a month a physical count, auditors once a year. Okay, so year-end physical counts exist forever. Now with RFID, you don't know, if you don't know what RFID is, it's a chip with the Uniform Product Code, UPC, on it. So it's a chip that has that number, which is the barcode of that particular item. And now they have chips. And like when you go to EasyPass, what you are basically doing is communicating with the sensors of New Jersey Transit, of the highways. I don't know if New Jersey Transit, who it is. Okay, and so basically you go to the booth. There is a wave sent to your RFID chip. It returns your RFID ID and say, "Oh, Joe Blow passed here." And when you go to the other side and you get out of the highway, it measures your gain. So they started putting these chips also in an inventory. And used to be very expensive, $10, $15. Now they cost 1 cent or 2 cents. So you can go over to an inventory location, send that wave in, and get a response to how many items are there. Actually, you don't need to go to the inventory location. You can do that remotely. If you have access and everything is good. And so many inventories have GPS, and they know where that particular item is to. Now, so you can have this year-end RFID counts, but the cost here is not the counting. The cost here is having the chips on the devices. And these chips are pretty cheap, so a lot of people are putting these chips basically for product flow control, for other production obligations. Now, if you have that there and collecting that information, the company will count monthly. You can do it too as an auditor. And you can do it at the end. So you can do it yearly, monthly, daily, or you could do it second by second if there was advantage. So actually, I want you to keep that in mind. The most important thing to keep in mind is once you get the process in these electronic form, in this way of doing it, the frequency of doing this is contingent to the benefit you get. And if you have an application to worry about it every day, every hour, every minute, and it's worthwhile spending the effort on it, you do it. So this was the basic of it. Then you start thinking about Imagineering a little bit more, and you realize that inventory arrives all the time into your warehouses. So if you can count it in the warehouse, you can put a sensor in the entrance and detect when the chips arrive. The chips and the inventory pieces attached to it. So you can have that. And you can also detect when they leave your inventory. Interesting. So now you have a flow of the inventory items that you can do it once a year, once a month, once a second, or do it all the time, always perceiving when goes in, things go out. So the auditor has a reasonably good idea of inventory. I think I sent you a copy that Denise and myself, we have published with the CPA journal being published this month, whereby we are talking, we should really be using drones for measuring large item inventories. A lot of talk about in that paper about COVID-related audit facilitation by technology. And so on this case, you can track the merchandise path. And then you start thinking, well, I have these partners in business. Yes?
No, I was just going to say something when you wrapped up, because I actually had experience. I guess I'm speaking now. I was a process improvement consultant before I came onto this program, and what you're talking about, Salonis, I was actually working with that, and it's really interesting because as a process improvement consultant, a lot of times the clients would bring us in to, most of the project time was just creating the project.
Adam, we are losing you a little bit.
Reading documentation and meeting with people. Basically, it was really interesting because if they have the data for it, they can basically just plug that data into Salonis and create the process map just instantly. And then you can focus on improving the process. That was my job, but I just thought it's a really interesting software, and I just wanted to note that I had experience with that, and it was really efficient.
So, Adam, I like this. Would be great if you can do your final project on something like this. But look at the full picture that I'm saying and see if you can kind of imagineer this in a more complete form. But don't advance it because I have much more to go, and I want you to do on the whole thing, because this is actually the first time I show the rest of this slide. You're going to see it. Are you guys okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So there it is. Now you can link your receiving inventory from your suppliers. You can link delivering your inventory for clients, and think about this is actually doable in virtual items too. You know who you sent it to, you know who you received it from. So you can track even non-physical things. And they would have RFID, etc. There'll be many suppliers, many customers, and basically the auditor can, in a dashboard, follow what happens. So if a trucker stops in his girlfriend's house for the afternoon, you know that he didn't move. And you know where your inventory is sitting. If your inventory starts from the supplier at a level 100 and then gets to your warehouse at a level 95, you know that somewhere in the way, 5 got eliminated, or got removed, or got broken, or whatever. Okay, so this is basically the what you can track with electronic these days, and it's very valuable for not only auditing, but it's very, very valuable for operations if you are going to do that. Now, you leave breadcrumbs behind. In addition to tracking with RFIDs, you have security videos that you can use AI type of thing to identify devices. And you have collection of information by the suppliers, by the customers. I call them e-tracks, but is actually what I was talking before, process mining type of thing, what we call ERP logs, where you extract, say, at this moment, Adam sent this item out. So you have the item number, you also have the time of the day, and you have who signed it or whatever. So this is a little bit of a track. And this is kind of, you see these two circles say, this is my part of the business. That's external element, customers and suppliers. And I can, as an auditor, monitor my part of the business. Now comes the big change here that's happening. You know, whoever said that data has to be within your company? All of you would say, I said it. Companies keep their own data. Well, there is this new technology. Abby will tell you all about it. Blockchain. And what is blockchain? It's basically an immutable sequence of numbers, whereby more than one party keep a copy of that and validate it. And up to now, there have been a lot of fraud around blockchain, around Bitcoin, but the basic structure of blockchain has not been tampered, has not been destructed. Okay, you cannot at this moment change a value in blockchain and not being detected. Now, that brings a very, very interesting usage for blockchain that you haven't heard too much. In the past, and up to now, people are thinking about their internal private blockchains and etc., or public blockchains to give you some government-related data. But why can't you and your clients have a blockchain together that all the data is kept in there and doesn't need really to be audited or validated? Why? Because you and the client are watching it. And it's immutable at this moment. So the idea of individual company custody of data might change. And what I'm basically saying is that there'll be mixed custody of data. And it will be very interesting to see how this evolves. Another thing, you're going to hear more about this by Abby, but not about exactly this. Andrea Rosario finished a blockchain-related dissertation, and she talks about sub-blockchains. So even in not talking about one stream of data stored, you're talking about maybe several intervening, interrelated blockchain strings. Be patient, you're going to hear more about this. And now you see these green arrows. And what these green arrows is what I talked before, the process mining logs, linking, creating these paths for merchandise. But now, you know, the interesting thing is that the process is not only internal. Now you are linking the suppliers to you, and you could, I just didn't want to clog this thing, and to your customers. So the whole flow of that particular transaction has logs related to it. That's very interesting because your entire life cycle can be controlled. And then the exogenous variables come in. Remember, we're talking about exogenous variables? You know, you are buying products, people are commenting on that in social media, they are sending emails for ordering. The IoT devices are capturing pictures of the trucks traveling. And the big issue here is pulling these very disconnected items together. I call this the ecosystem, the data ecosystem. And the big difficulty of the future is bringing this disjoint data, getting access to them and making them work together. And by the way, there are several companies emerging whose job is just providing data in a manageable integrator. For the company Engine B in the UK basically specializes on taking data out of things like one company's databases and providing it in a standardized format to other companies' databases, creating this data ecosystem. Very big business emerging that doesn't really exist today, the homogenization of databases, close to what I call the data ecosystem. And then the other element of this is that you as auditors have to think about is that you can put agents which basically monitor this. What is an agent? Is not a person, it's a software agent, an intelligent agent, whereby you measure these things some way or evaluate something some way. So what we call daemons is basically an event-activated software with some intelligence or maybe without intelligence, but just by coming in the right time is some form of intelligence. And so it's say if this value is, for example, these days you look at transactions generated off hours. Okay, so you put an agent there that look at the time. If it's off hours, calls an alarm, and if it meets certain conditions, it stops the transaction. And the cron is the same kind of agent, but is not event activated, it's time activated. You run it every day, every hour, every second, every nanosecond. Okay, so this whole environmental system, this environment, is an ecosystem of operations and data. And these intelligent agents can act in any part of this system as far as data is made available and communication interface is available. And so one more thought is this thought of, you can link all of these with a process mining log. And we did several process mining studies. And they kind of showed this. Here is a log, and this is what Yunsen, one of our PhD students, called the spaghetti. And remember, I told you before that I anticipated maybe 4 paths that were common, these dark lines paths. But look what we find. We find pure spaghetti in here. And it looks spaghetti, looks confused, but actually, this is incredibly good evidence for auditing. And I have to convince the PCOB of that. And every time I talk to them, they say, yeah, but they don't do anything about it. Another one, we had like 3 data sets. Look at the spaghetti of them. 3 data sets with different spaghettis. And what you as an auditor in theory would have to do is pick up what would be a material error out of this. But what you have to understand about process mining is that it's a much stronger form of evidence because you know exactly what happened with the transaction. If too many transactions that were fraudulent went to John Doe, you look at John Doe. And once you come up with the rules of objection, meaning the rules of things that are not good, you can basically do what my PhD student Abdul Rahman Al-Rifai did. It's called continuous process mining. It's a continuous audit with process mining.